What makes a film bad? I know it's not really a question with a set answer, but let's consider it anyway. Every time we watch something, we're almost always making judgments on it, based on a set of criteria that we've internalised over the years. Even if we don't really know our reasons, whenever we watch something, we have an impulse to group it into one of two categories: good and bad. I've always been interested by this question because it's almost impossible to pin down exactly what makes one film great and another not so great. But there are common tropes that a lot of us point towards when we're discussing something. Whether it be bad acting, thin or incomprehensible plotting, or a general disregard for established film conventions, we all point to the same sort of factors when we're trying to articulate why something is bad, even if the film in question's quality is disputable. At the same time, there's also a certain mysticism about particularly awful films, a kind of ironic love that we all have for the truly terrible. Films like Plan 9 from Outer Space, Troll 2 or Battlefield Earth, as bad as they are beloved by large audiences because their awfulness is unintentionally hilarious. We love to watch them fail time and time again. Among this special group of films is the movie Kung Fury, a YouTube sensation that succeeded in its goal to break the internet when it was released a few years ago, by racking up millions of views and generating an enormous amount of coverage online. Much of the conversation surrounding Kung Fury centred on its deliberately wooden dialogue, nonsensical plotline, and thinly sketched characters, who were nothing more than parodies of various genre conventions. However, as I watched the film over and over again, the same question kept rattling through my brain. Is this movie bad, or is it good? And if it was bad, what was it that made it feel different to other films in that category? Now, as I've already said, this is obviously a highly subjective question. There isn't really a set way to quantify good or bad. But this aside, it's very difficult to establish whether a film like Kung Fury fits into either category. The literary theorist Mark Yankovic has argued that our reverence for certain kinds of bad movies may come from the same innate place as our praise for good ones, in that bad films are not praised for their inherent artistry, but rather for their remarkable lack of it. In this sense, a beloved bad movie is weighed up against an existing set of criteria that has been established by consensus, and this generally centres upon the supposedly unintentional humour that is caused by its ineptitude. Kung Fury's key hook is that it presents filmmaking ineptitude with unabashed joy. Take a scene like this.
You need to start following the rules like the rest of us, so I'm assigning you a new partner.
What? Hell no, I work alone.
Not anymore, you don't. Say hi to your new partner, Triceracop.
Very nice meeting you, Kung Fury. Looking forward to working with you.
Here the acting is awful, the CGI dated, and the incorporation of a character as left field as Triceracop is absolutely ridiculous. It isn't that the sequence isn't bad, at least by the standards that we value good and bad, the film falls squarely into the latter category, but that this ineptitude seems somewhat disingenuous. For example, let's look at a scene from Tommy Wiseau's cult classic The Room, widely regarded as one of the worst films ever made.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
You think girls like to cheat like guys do?
What makes you say that?
I don't know. I'm just thinking.
I don't have to worry about that because Lisa's loyal to me.
Yeah, man, you never know. People are very strange these days. I used to know a girl. She had a dozen guys. One of them found out about it, beat her up so bad she ended up in a hospital on Guerrero Street.
What a story, Mark.
Yeah, you can say that again.
Viewed casually, the two scenes seem fairly similar. Both have obvious production errors, strange, almost nonsensical dialogue, and an emphasis on theatrical overacting. But the key differentiator here is intention. As we know from interviews, studio gossip, and of course, The Disaster Artist, The Room was a film that was created with absolute sincerity. It aspired to be a game-changing film that was to be taken as seriously as its inspiration, the talented Mr. Ripley. Unfortunately, due to a lack of competence, Wiseau was unable to bring his dreams into fruition and instead made one of the most melodramatic, incomprehensible films ever to be advertised by Billboard. When we're laughing at The Room, we're almost laughing at what could have been. We know what type of film it's trying to be, and for better or for worse, we're primarily laughing at its failure to do so. Now let's go back to Kung Fury. When we watch the film again, let's ask ourselves, what is the intention? In the broadest sense, the film is looking to pay homage to its bad film forebearers, incorporating an abundance of references to Z-list films, exploitation pictures, and melodramas. This is apparent immediately from the film's opening crawl, which features a grainy logo for Sandberg's company, Laser Unicorns. The logo bears more than a similarity to the logo of Draft Drafthouse Films, a Texas-based distribution company who were responsible for the restoration of cult 80s movie Miami Connection. Featuring a similar combination of kung fu and action cop tropes, Miami Connection has maintained a strong cult following due to its extremely rudimentary production values and dialogue, which are closer to a porno than a movie script.
Excuse me, madame. May I have a little kiss, please? A little kiss, please. Come on. Come on. Whoop.
Who the hell are you?
Jerk.
It's an asshole. Get away from us.
Does this sound familiar? With this established from the get-go, it soon becomes apparent that Kung Fury is crawling with references. Thugs storm the streets like a scene from The Warriors. Kung Fury mounts his multi-purpose car like it's Kit from Knight Rider. Barbariana's logo is a carbon copy of the one used in Schwarzenegger's Conan the Barbarian. Even Triceratops is somewhat of a homage to failed Whoopi Goldberg vehicle Theodore Rex. Attacking us with these references, Kung Fury tries hard to convince us that it is indeed a bad movie, but in actuality, all its production mistakes are extremely calculated. Part of the confusion lies from the fact that the project is trading almost exclusively in nostalgia. In presenting all these bad aesthetics, it is willing audiences to remember the films it is referencing, and in turn, reify Kung Fury in the same way that they reify the unintentional mistakes of these cult classics. This is akin to theorist Jean Baudrillard's concept of warmth. When events first occur, they are warm because emotion is present. You are in the here and now of the moment. As time passes, these events get colder and colder, as they are merely remembered through flashbacks, references, and nostalgia. The actual event in question has been replaced with the remembrance of the event. Think about something like 80s fashion. What was once ridiculed as an abomination is now resurrected in the name of nostalgia. In the same way, Kung Fury attempts to transport us back to a time when such production mistakes were unintentional, and make us laugh through our remembrance of these films. But it does not capture an identical feeling to the films in question, it is merely a memory. If we return briefly to The Room, or any other bad movies, it is easy to point out production mistakes, but consider this. Whilst for someone like Wiseau, these mistakes were the result of problems, to Sandberg, they were a tick sheet, a precise guide to get a desired effect from his audience. In seeking to replicate the bad film, rather than be one in its own right, Kung Fury is an entirely different beast to our previous ideas of bad filmmaking. In fact, it's something of a paradox. On the one hand, it succeeds in replicating the aesthetics of a bad film, and so, for all intents and purposes, it is a bad film. On the other, in its deliberateness, it is locked out of what can be described as a value system of incompetence. We cannot laugh at it in the same way that we laugh at The Room, because we know that everything that has been done so in a precise and calculated manner. This results in a film that is, on the surface, bad, but when considered more closely, lacks a key factor that is commonly used to determine a film's qualitative classification. Whilst a bad film aspires to be great and fails to do so, Kung Fury aspires to be bad and succeeds. So can you call Kung Fury bad filmmaking? This idea isn't just symptomatic of Kung Fury in particular, but is a problem with the linear approach that we often have towards good and bad when talking about movies. Consider a studio like Troma, who specialised in these kinds of schlocky, poorly conceived films that are often extremely violent and in bad taste.
He's faking it, Julie. He's faking it.
There's nothing especially good about this scene in a classical sense. The dialogue is hacky, the special effects are questionable, and the plot is just a thinly veiled excuse to move from action sequence to action sequence. But does the movie have any grand aspirations beyond this? If its intention is to be exactly as I've described it, does it really warrant the label bad? This is obviously an extremely difficult question to answer. It's impossible to know the exact intention that the artist has when creating their work, but I wonder whether it may be better to consider these qualities in a way that's more akin to a political compass rather than the straight dividers of good and bad. If we plot the graph and have one axis that represents quality, in a broad sense, and one that represents intention, we get a very different way of considering good and bad. If we look at this spread, we've got a film like Apocalypse Now, which is both good and delivers on its intentions, Kung Fury, which is bad but succeeds, and something like The Room, which aspires to be like Citizen Kane but fails spectacularly. In using this model, we get a better approximation of where to place Kung Fury on this scale of good and bad. These two terms are less clear-cut categories and more a Venn diagram in which attributes of both can be merged. Really, we can say something like Kung Fury is a good bad movie. It's bad because it flaunts all conventions of good taste, established filmmaking, or story structure. But it does so deliberately, making it simultaneously good. It's not really fair to lock these films into their positions on our bad film political compass either. Consider this. A person may watch Kung Fury completely oblivious to the films that it is referencing. To them, the film is a mess from start to finish. Likewise, without all of the extra textual material, someone could watch The Room and think that it was just a lame parody of a bad movie, because surely no film could be this bad unintentionally, right? In this sense, the positions on this graph aren't fixed, rather they are determined by a person's own awareness of the film's intention, as well as their personal taste. Really, there isn't a correct way to go about this, but as I said at the beginning of this video, it was never my intention to find a way of quantifying good and bad. I just wanted to show these words are more complicated than they first appear.
If you'd like to see more from Full Fat videos, please check out our channel, and why not check out our Facebook and Instagram pages for all the latest updates. Until next week, stay milky.